few.
Thank you. Follow up if I could. Impetus for MLK Day, you know, I guess I'd be curious the reasoning. Are there contractors or stakeholders that the city staff work with that do take that holiday off, and so there's disjointment in that regard, or it's just more of a retention technique? Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I cannot tell you that there is such a disparity in being able to get work done on that day that's what brings us here to you with this request. It is far more in line with the idea of recognizing the values that the holiday is supposed to promote, and taking that step, as well as the advantages that we think we gain from a recruitment and retention standpoint.
Those were my questions.
Oh, those were your questions. Okay. Councilor Pacheco.
Carter, I don't have any questions. I think it's fantastic, and I think we should move forward with it. I don't see any issues. I think it honors MLK and what it stands for. I think it does send a message, and I think the employees deserve it. So there's no questions from me.
Councilor Pollock.
I'll just add, I'm just doing a quick search. It looks like it's a state holiday. It's observed at state government and many county governments and municipal governments around the state. So it seems to be in line with what many other entities are doing.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
Not okay?
I'm okay.
You're okay.
If I
Okay.
could add an asterisk though, I just think it's something we should be mindful of as we get into the fall, which is typically when we discuss like potential employee bonuses and raises and stuff, I feel like, and so just something for us to be mindful of. We brought up 6 cent at our last meeting. Folks got lots of things to say about that, and so we got to be mindful of balance all these things. Just to say nothing about our city staff, who I think are all amazing rock stars, but if we want to get down to other important things too, we got to just be mindful of that is all I'd ask. Thank you.
Very good. The next thing on the agenda then would be the WAM resolutions. Whoops. Oh, I'm sorry. I did not see your hand. I apologize. There you go. Here, I'll give you one of your pencils. You can throw at me.
Quick question, Carter.
Sure.
Anna Kidder from the health department had come to ask for more money, and I see that we didn't put that in. And I don't remember us ever really discussing that. Is there a time when we are gonna discuss that, or did we decide no and I wasn't listening?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, we did not get direction one way or the other from the council, and so we are open to whatever council would like to see from that.
Okay, this is me bringing it up, please. That's it.
Do we want to discuss at a future date more money for the health department? Yay? I see a bunch of yays, so let's try to put that on the agenda.
We'll bring it up, probably in the next work session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else? Now we will go to the WAM resolutions. Did you want to tee that up, Mr. City Manager?
I'd be happy to, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The opportunity that's before us, of course, which happens to be extremely timely, is with regard to the WAM convention that we're about to enter into this week, as you know, and the chance that we have for your delegates to weigh in on the menu of resolutions that will be discussed with the resolutions committee first, and then following that deliberation, the resolutions that ultimately make it to the body as a whole to vote on. As you know, you have delegated Vice Mayor Ingebretson to represent you in that respect, with Councilor Gamroth as the alternate, excuse me. If for whatever reason Vice Mayor Ingebretson cannot perform those duties. What you have in front of you is essentially a menu of all those resolutions that have been submitted to the resolutions committee. You probably noticed in our recommendation comments that we are particularly interested in as your staff, those resolutions that provide some improvement with regard to liquor licensure, resolutions that allow for local revenue generation and more authority in that regard, of which there's a couple. And of course, resolutions pertaining to legal advertisements and the flexibility that we're always seeking in that respect as well. Those are obviously three broad categories that we tend to look out for. And the list, however, that's submitted certainly covers far more ideas and issues beyond that. My hope is that tonight, council can tell us, which ones you'd rather us not support, assuming that there are far less in number resolutions that you would rather us not support than there are resolutions you're comfortable with. And if there are those out there, it would be helpful to know that. And Flora and I are here tonight to help answer any questions you might have about this slate. And of course, questions beyond that too, as well, if you have it.
I guess I'm figuring that we've all looked at them in our packet. Are there any of these resolutions that give anybody heartburn that they would not like to see the city support? Councilor Daniel.
I don't have any hard no's right now, but I was personally feeling like I needed more information in regards to a couple of them. For instance, City of Douglas's transient guest tax, I guess still not quite understanding the dilemma there. It seems to be that they have folks that come in for, seasonal work or something, and that they're staying long time in hotels, and that's taking up all their rooms for tourism related. So I guess I would just like to understand that one a little bit more. I might be the only one.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, the basic idea that Douglas is feeling the angst over is with regard to visitors to their community that stay longer than 30 days. And for those that do, that lodging tax is essentially waived for those folks. And so when you're a community like Douglas, where there are a number of those transient visitors, they lose out on that lodging tax proceed that otherwise they would be able to gain for visitors who were there less than that 30-day cutoff. And so Douglas is proposing that that be looked at and perhaps considered so that that transient idea be removed. Or do you have any additional insight into that?
Your Honor, no, I don't. That's basically the purpose, is just to have that applied to stays over 30 days.
So,
And
okay.
And I'm assuming that if, say, a major corporation rented a block of rooms like for 3 months, even though it wasn't the same individual that's there, it would still be waived because it was the corporate that was paying for it, and they paid for it for 60 days.
Right.
That has happened as well here in Casper as well, with some of the oil field companies rotating crews in and out. So that would also apply and help us out here, or our hotels here in this area as well. So to help clarify that a little bit further, I believe I saw 2 hands down here.
So just a quick clarification on that issue. Are the transient guests paying tax on the first 30 days? Or do you know?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor,
So unless I make so in other words, unless I make a reservation for 60 days or 45 days, if I stay for an undetermined, but it accumulates to over more than 30, not yet, maybe
Yeah.
I'm
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I am sure there are ways in which that statute can be manipulated and so forth.
Sure,
pursuant
and
to
Steve's
whatever it is.
example is,
Yeah,
a good one.
but I think that's the typical
yeah,
thing that most communities see that are energy communities, Douglas, Gillette,
Yes.
Pinedale.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. A number of communities have dealt with that over the years and have had the same concern
sure,
that those proceeds are essentially lost
sure.
because those rooms are not being allowed to be occupied by folks who would otherwise be subject to that
Sure.
lodging tax.
Yeah.
Revenue.
Councilor Paul.
I wanted a little bit of clarification on a different item here. Number 8 from the town of Opal, the designation of public works employees as emergency personnel. Curious if you had any sense as to what the impact of doing that would be for us, if there would be any potential negative effect from that, or if it just gives us more flexibility. How do you see that impacting us?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I had very similar questions with regard to this idea. And while I can't give you a whole lot of detail as to what the folks in Opal are considering, I would say that this is probably with regard to some of the things that we've run into here in recent history, wherein folks who are called out in the middle of the night to work on water lines don't have the option of not being considered critical and first responder type personnel because of the critical nature of what they do. The water line's got to be fixed regardless of whether or not we're in, blizzard conditions or pandemic conditions or whatever the case may be. And that really is all I know about that particular idea.
Oh, along some of those same lines, during COVID, certain people, when they were locking down and restricting travel, were, if they were designated as critical personnel, could still go ahead and travel cross state lines, things along those lines. And that may be looking like if they had to call somebody out of Salt Lake, or if we get into that type of a situation, to be able to get people to take care of critical infrastructure needs.
Follow up if I can.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
kind of curious around, like, does it have impact on insurance rates or like that type of job designation? Does that have, broader implications for us than just, you can go do your job in a state of emergency or, whatever else?
Mr. Mayor, as far as workers' comp and those kinds of things are concerned, public works employees are already within a category of risk that I don't think this would change. At least as I can tell, near as I can tell. Or unless you had something else that you would add in your research. Okay. So I'm kind of neutral as it relates to whether or not this should be something we pursue with vigor. I think it's an interesting idea, but beyond that, I'm not sure what else it brings.
And again, this goes back to our experience with COVID. We had a couple of our clients designate us as critical people because of what we did for them in Wyoming, that if they had a significant issue with one of their wells, one of their lines, we were allowed to go take care of it, and it did not affect any of our workers' comp, unemployment, or anything. So from what I knew there, I believe you had something, Councilor Gamble.
Question for Carter. Are you looking for us to, my understanding is that this WAM convention this week, Lisa, if you're still planning on going, will be voting on our behalf. Is Lisa part of the resolutions committee? I guess she'll be a voting delegate regardless.
Correct.
So
Correct.
are we looking to give her instruction in regards to the A's and A's on each of these specific line items of collector and vote?
Mr. Mayor, council can certainly go through this however you'd like. My assumption was that there are far fewer resolutions that you would have us not support than there are those that you're comfortable with. And so if I could at least get the baseline with regard to the ones that you're just absolutely not interested in, that probably would be the most efficient use of your time, unless I'm reading this wrong completely.
what I'm reading from council is basically they've been asking more clarifying questions about what they are. And I guess I will open it up. I am not in favor of legalizing cannabis. And you knew that was gonna come. And I know you're in favor of it, but, that would be, from my perspective, that would be the only one that I have any angst about at all. I personally think all of the rest of them are fine, which is the type of direction I think, city management and, vice mayor would like to take to Wham. So does anybody have any angst about any of the rest of them besides that one?
No angst, but I do have a question about one more, but.
Oh, go ahead, because I think this one's gonna bring up a little discussion.
Okay. So a question just about number one is, I don't quite get the understand the benefit of that, other than what I can conjecture, that, the benefit of government entities keeping the land under condominiums is to prevent the sale of those and demolition of workforce housing, perhaps rising land costs and taxation. But those are the benefits I could think of. Can you think of any other rationale for that?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor, I think you hit the nail on the head. It would be another tool that cities and towns could use to facilitate workforce housing projects.
Or other housing?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm a little worried about that one in that, I realize that there are certainly a number of towns that have a much more heightened issue with regard to workforce housing than say maybe we do here in Casper. But the reason that it brings me some pause is, I don't know that I'd want to encourage council to get into the workforce housing development business beyond selling land to private developers for that purpose, which we have a history of, and it's worked really well in terms of facilitating the development of housing, holding on to that land and making it available to me a little bit beyond that. But that's just my, singular opinion. I do realize though that there are a number of tools that are needed in other parts of the state.
So it simply allows that, doesn't require it.
I think that's correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's correct.
Any other concerns about anything besides number 5?
I guess I'm sorry, I'm still confused about process. So if one of us is concerned about something, does that mean Lisa's not gonna vote for it?
No,
got
we're gonna have to
I
take a
may
vote right
be the
now.
only one that's concerned about it, so if the other 8 of you vote to leave it in there, that's the way it goes.
In other words, Mr. Mayor, that would be the direction that Vice Mayor would take, whatever the majority will of the council is.
So, but we haven't given any direction yet.
That's correct.
And tonight is the night to do that because it starts
Tomorrow.
tomorrow. So
Exactly.
can we go through one by one? Because I feel like otherwise, or are we just saying by default?
By
We're,
default.
Basically by default,
Okay.
because
Unless you're,
that was why I asked if
Unless
anybody
you're-
has any concern about it. Otherwise, we're gonna run out of time.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Confused with them.
Nope, that's,
We're coming to the final.
nope, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
But I am not in favor of legalizing marijuana. Now, am I the only one here that feels that way?
Point of clarification, I believe it's to decriminalize, which is slightly different.
Correct.
Now, to me, decriminalizing, legalizing are the same thing. I'm gonna wind up with pot smokers on my drilling rigs. I don't want them there.
okay, point of clarification. So my understanding of the difference, and this is the only reason I can live with this, is that decriminalizing simply removes jail time and the felony convictions on very small amounts. Whereas the city could still levy fines, we can still levy, treatment or whatever, things like that. Which is basically what's happening now. That's the practice, I believe, is our courts try to, that's why we have drug court and things like that, that try to get people either to treatment or something like that. Whereas legalization, and you can look this up, is legalization removes all legal, consequences. It's just wide open, which means dispensaries and that kind of thing. I would not be in support of that in Wyoming. However, and the rationale here is around, I believe it's around medical, headed for medical probably, which I can understand, but decriminalizing is vastly different than legal. They're not the same thing. We would still, like I said, be able to levy fines, which is what most municipalities do. Whereas legalization would be wide open for dispensaries and no legal consequences whatsoever. So that's my understanding.
Everybody else besides me want to leave it in there?
Can we get a clarification on that?
Yeah, Mayor, councilors, I think Councilor Bond is pretty spot on. I just pulled up because I wasn't 100% sure myself, but that is correct. Decriminalization, remove any criminal penalties for minor, possession of minor amounts and so forth, but it would not legalize dispensaries or, trafficking, for lack of a better word, engaging in the trade of marijuana, but it would either be no criminal prosecution or a fine, but otherwise.
For small amounts.
For small amounts.
For,
Personal use.
Yep.
personally, larger amounts would be jail time, felony possible felony
I think that's
convictions.
accurate.
Yeah.
So my take behind it is that it seems to be a pragmatic approach to dealing with it, because I know there are a lot of people that do get sentenced. They go to jail, they go to prison, they can get felony charges when it's probably not warranted for small amounts of marijuana. So I'm behind it. I think it's a good pragmatic move around it. So.
Kind of a question here. So is it more lessening the burden on our jails?
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, is that where this
Which ultimately would affect also our bottom line.
That's what
As well. So I think there's two prongs to it that I think are incredibly important and pragmatic approach for us financially too.
What do you want, Carter?
I've never been opposed to legal, but decriminalizing does still make it not okay on your rate. So still not legal to smoke marijuana without a medical license, and I do tend to lean towards if the doctor thinks you need it. Okay, that definitely, but I'm okay with decriminalization, but I will sit here and tell you that legalization, I will fight with an arm's reach. But I'm not gonna fight with this one, because I was my on this one. I do think that there's a line between the two words, and this side I'm not horribly uncomfortable.
Then it looks like it's yes for everything. I will not continue on. The next item up then would be the police grant.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you all know, we are teeing up the opportunity to pursue some funding for the police department to help us in our recruitment efforts and hopefully get us closer to a fully staffed status in the police department. As you saw in your memo here, this means that if we are fortunate enough to receive this award, if you will, that means that we could ostensibly receive $750,000 through the feds for a 3-year commitment for potentially 6 officers, which would also require a match on our part to leverage that funding into the organization. We then would have a commitment for 2 additional years for that level of staffing, which I would say we should do, in that we need that full staffing scenario in our organization. I did ask the chief to come forward and clarify some of these numbers that you're reading about in the memo, just to mitigate any question that you might have. And then, of course, we're hopeful that we can gain your blessing to pursue this funding with gusto. Hopefully be victorious.
Chief.
Mayor and council, the numbers on there, just so that the practical application of this is that these represent unfunded positions for the Casper Police Department. And these 6 positions would, if we were successful at this competitive grant, would provide up to a maximum of $125,000 per officer for the life of the grant, which would be 3 years. So effectively, divide 125 by 3, and that would be the annual contribution that the federal government would be making towards us. The rest of that employee's salary and benefits would be something that we would be picking up. So it's an opportunity to kind of take advantage of this $750,000 as an opportunity to kind of incentivize us to increase our recruiting, to fill those unfunded positions.
When you say unfunded positions, can you help me understand that a little bit better? So these are positions that are already authorized and allocated to your department, but we haven't been able to fund. Is that correct?
Your Honor, Counselor, that's exactly correct. So if we were, the city manager has authorized us to have up to 110 sworn police officers. Currently today, I think I'm at 95. And so that we don't artificially inflate our budget with positions that aren't going to be filled because of the very unlikely I would be able to secure that many positions. So they are unfunded in FY25. This grant would help kind of incentivize us to fill those positions, to kind of restore us to a better, more efficient operating level to take care of the crime needs in our community.
Any other questions?
So Chief, just to clarify again, so it's over a period of 3 years, $750,000 per year?
No, Your Honor, this would be for the total grant. If we were awarded all 6 positions, the maximum amount that they would be contributing to us would be $750,000. So if we can think of it this way,
I see.
a police officer is going to, their total salary and benefits, I'm going to estimate off the top of my head, probably $90,000 a year. So over the 3 years, that's going to be $270,000 of full-time employee expenses to the city, of which they would return 125 of that to us. So,
I guess just a question on numbers and authorization. Can you clarify? I mean, I feel like I have the impression that filling the positions has been a challenge and finding qualified candidates. So does this go above and beyond the 95 then, or does it supplement positions that were, how does this work if we're unable to fill them?
Again, this is, the purpose of this grant is an initiative through the Department of Justice to incentivize, encourage municipalities and counties and state organizations to kind of up their game a little bit to fill these positions. So this would be an opportunity for us to kind of stretch a little further, increase those recruiting and selection efforts in order to take advantage of this $750,000.
So what is there money in there then to support that extended? Is there money in there to help kind of broaden access to possible officers, or is it just? Because I don't understand how supporting the positions helps us with the obstacles we're seeing in terms of getting candidates.
Your Honor, Counselor, if I what I'm sensing from you is, let me try to answer it as best as, this is not a grant to provide for recruiting, marketing, and, programs such as that. This is boots on the ground. If we're able to hire them, they would provide this money to help fund their employment for a 3-year period. Following which we would be committing to, we're gonna keep them and not lay them off for 2 years. Historically, we do not lay off police officers here. That's a very rare occurrence. We actually want these police officers. We've just not been able to, one, fill them, and two, not fund them under the current scenario. So this is the benefit to us, up to $750,000. I would, that's something that these are goals that we're targeting anyway. So it's a benefit to us to apply for this. It is a competitive grant. We're going to put forward, with your approval, we will put forward a good application. We stand good opportunities to be successful in this competitive grant because of the realities in Wyoming and the challenges that are being faced in Wyoming. We stand really good chances to be successful at this, but we don't want to do this in a vacuum without council's awareness and approval.
Any other questions? All in favor of them going ahead and applying for the grant? Looks like you've got our head, Chief.
Thank you, council.
Thank you for clarifying the question. I guess we're up for the 6 cent discussion. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Appreciate the opportunity to bring this back to you in such short turnaround, if you will, in that we brought this forward for the first time during our budget discussions last week. Your memo, in concert with the memo that your city attorney sent out, pretty much captures the question very well, in my estimation, and as well as gives you some detail beyond what we talked about last week. Not the least of which would be a list of projects that is really meant to be sort of the first iteration, if you will, of ideas that you could consider showing up on the ballot ultimately, if we are lucky enough to get to that point. And the real purpose, though, that tonight's discussion, I hope, will yield is that of getting your blessing to move forward to the county commissioners and ask for their allowance that the city of Casper occupy a space on the ballot in November to bring a 6 cent question to the voters of Casper and to the voters of Casper only. Now, as you recall probably from last week's discussion, we're in the real unique situation that new statutes allow for, wherein in the absence of a 6 cent already in place, and in the absence of the neighboring communities not wanting to pursue a countywide 6 cent initiative, the opportunity exists for the city of Casper to approach its own voters with the commissioner's blessings. Now, I want you to be thinking about the list ultimately, because we are going to need your direction as to what that looks like. And I want to remind you, this is just a series of ideas that I've heard you have an interest in, that I've heard representatives of the public identify as being of high interest as well. And so ultimately, you're going to have to find the balance as it relates to that mixture of projects that should show up in menu fashion on the ballot. The other thing you need to be aware of too is that in this unique scenario, unique stipulations apply as well. For a 6 cent proposal in this character, you really only have 2 years that you can collect funding to try to accomplish your bevy of projects, whatever that ends up being, and whatever it is that the populace, the voting populace actually passes. We believe that would entail a roughly 17 to $18 million receipt schedule per year. So the proposal that you ultimately come away with or propose to the county to include on the ballot really should only include projects that can be captured within that revenue strategy, that revenue schedule. And of course, in 2 years, that could mean as much as $36 million. You don't see numbers on these projects right now. We want to improve that as we come forward to you with the blessing of the county commission, hopefully, that allows us to move forward and of course seek your direction later. So ultimately, the question is before you tonight is whether or not we can proceed forward to the commissioners, and if so, we hope to do so post haste with your assistance. And then, of course, we will come to you very soon thereafter as well, if the commissioners give us that green light to talk to you about those projects that need to show up on the ballot.
Go ahead. Councilor Pacheco.
So I'm going to support this because it's an opportunity. The voting public can vote this. And I think I'm incredibly open to that because I think giving them the choice to decide what they want. Cheyenne does this regularly with great success. I know that you get a lot of pushback because of taxes, but with this, giving the right and the option for people to make that decision, and they could vote it all down, whatever, but it's up to them to whether they want to move that direction towards the tax. I feel more comfortable doing that, so I'll be supporting it.
Councilor Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor. More so to satiate my curiosity, but I know Cheyenne passed a slate of projects in excess of 120 million. Did they really generate that much more sales tax?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor, I don't think so. I think the distinct difference that Laramie County experiences is typically every 4 years, considering a countywide ballot. This particular initiative would only be for City of Casper citizens and voting citizens at that. So their situation is typically a countywide scenario. I believe if we get the opportunity to move forward in this direction, we will be the first under that new statute to see what it is that our voters in Casper think about these possibilities.
Thank you. I guess that still surprises me because it looks like we determined that about 25% of sales tax revenues occur outside the city, but still within the county. So they're still very far above us. But I was curious more so for the city attorney, because I fielded some comments from people wondering about, I guess, fairness to the other municipalities. If they didn't support a countywide tax, would this be essentially us levying a tax on them because so many people do business in the city of Casper? I was curious if the city attorney has any thoughts from a legal perspective on that. I mean, I assume since the state legislature passed it and stuff, that wasn't a concern. However, I do know Casper is unique in a lot of sense that the suburbs of Casper, and it's not really something that occurs in the rest of the state.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, you are correct that if such a tax were passed citywide just in Casper, residents of the neighboring communities who shop in Casper would be paying that, as would any visitors to Casper that come from out of state or people that are passing through. The difference obviously is that merchants in Mills or Evansville or elsewhere in the county would not be levying that additional tax. And so from a legal standpoint, I don't think that there's any impediment. Certainly, it's a brand new statute, became effective January 1 of 21. As the city manager indicated, I'm unaware as well of any other municipality that has adopted this under this new statute. But yeah, I don't see that there's any legal impediment, vis-a-vis an argument that it's some kind of, the tax, against our outlying folks. It could be no different than if you lived on the Colorado border and went into Colorado and had to pay their taxes.
Thanks.
I think it's great that this is an option for voters to be able to have their say. And if the discussion tonight is just seeking permission from the county, I think we should do that. And if they say no, it's a non-starter anyways. So I'd say let's ask permission and then see what happens.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but I'll support this as well. I think that looking at the mix of projects here, that feels important to me when we settle on our sort of final iteration of this. Having a mix of options that are appealing to the community, I think is really important because we want people to be able to exercise their opinion here. And so making sure that we've got projects on there that we believe have broad support across the community, and that provides some good variety for people to select from, I think will be helpful to inform us in future decisions along this line or other funding decisions. You know, to what extent are some of these types of projects supported by the community? I feel like we have a lot to learn from the community through this process as well. And so I hope that we structure the ballot in a way that allows us to maximize kind of the sense that we can get from the community about their priorities as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with my colleagues. I think this gives the citizenry a greater deal of autonomy over the decisions that we make, and that's why I've been supportive of this. My question is, it sounds like we estimate $35 million generated in 2 years, and so because there's a 2-year deadline, we could not put forward a slate of projects that we expect to cost more than $35 million. So is it safe to say that if one or more of those items fails at the ballot, that the tax would simply expire once it's generated the funding to cover the projects? So it would be up to 2 years, potentially less than 2 years, depending on how many projects are approved.
Mayor, Councilor, that is correct. There is language within the statute that allows, if it's tied to a specific purpose, if that amount is collected prior to, in this case, the 2-year expiration, then we can notify the county treasurer. My mind, that's pretty straightforward. It's the flip side. Approve more than you collect, then I think there's some ambiguity, but we're still working through that. But you're correct.
All in favor of going ahead and playing? Very good. Thank you. Continue on.
Appreciate that.
Agenda review.
Mr. Mayor, I really don't have anything to bring up in this part of the pre-meeting agenda.
Very good. Anybody have anything else? Then we will see you all back here in about 34 minutes. Get to feeling better, young lady. Talking to you, Lisa.
Oh, geez.
It's not my point. Gap your whole breakaway.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. You had 35 minutes. You didn't make it.
That's right.
Through my. These two.
Natural kind. Talk to us.
Leave me alone like this.
It is now 6 o'clock and time to start our regular meeting. Before we begin this evening, I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones. Council meetings are live streamed on the city's YouTube channel. I now call the June 4th, 2024 regular council meeting to order. Please note that Vice Mayor Ingebretson is attending virtually. All councilors are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please read the consent minute approval titles.
Approving the minutes of the May 7th, 2024 regular council meeting, the May 7th, 2024 executive session, and the May 21st, 2024 regular council.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read.
So moved.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Lisa? There we go. Please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Ingebretson voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the June 4th, 2024 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So, second.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Ingebretson voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
We would like to welcome Elisa Campbell, Kersha Ann, and the fire chief, Chief Black, and the police chief, Chief McFeeters down. Please come forward to introduce yourselves and discuss Men's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Hi, my name is Elisa Campbell. Very grateful to be here. I'm here because Keisha reached out to me about mid-March and said, "Did you know June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month?" And I said, no, I did not. And she said, more people should. We need to do something about that. And I said, okay, let's do this. So we're here because of her. So here's Miss Keisha.
Hi, I'm Keisha Ann. I just want to say thank you and thank you for making a proclamation on the attention that needs to be aware with men's mental health, especially with the state of Wyoming. So thank you.
Mayor and council, on behalf of the Casper Police Department, we want to throw our support behind this proclamation. Our community, our county, and our state continues to carry a heavy burden when it comes to suicide. Year to date, we've had some very tragic suicidal issues that have arisen. We suffer from too many completed suicides and way too many suicidal ideations. Unfortunately, it's the men who are overrepresented in that tragic statistic. So anything we can do to bring awareness to the need for better coping mechanisms amongst the male population of our community so that they can address their mental health needs without resorting to suicide. The police department wants to be a partner in this, and we congratulate each for taking on a project that has the potential to do such good.
Mayor and councilors, and it's hard to follow with that. Chief McFeeters said it very well, but the Casper Fire EMS Department is really happy that this is being brought to light. Being raised in the Casper Fire Department as a male,
You just brush it off and keep going. You're expected to just take it on the chin and keep moving. I've lived it, I've watched it, I still see it day in and day out with our men and women, but the men especially, it's becoming more apparent that they're expected to just take it, and we're working on changing that culture. Proclamations such as this help change that culture and show that men are vulnerable, we are human, and we need to take good care of our people to make sure that it's not slipping through the cracks and they're doing harm to themselves. So we support this 100% and we thank you for this initiative.
I will now read, read the proclamation. The primary focus of Men's Health Awareness Month is to encourage men to speak up and seek help for mental health issues. And whereas men are significantly less likely to seek help than women due to the unique challenges men face in dealing with mental health, societal expectations, and mental health stigma. And whereas women are diagnosed with depression twice as much as men, however, suicide data reveals the rate of suicide tends to be 4 times higher for men than women. Suicide is the 7th leading cause of death in men. And whereas stigma, societal expectations, and stereotypes of masculinity often result in men self-treating through addictive behaviors such as substance abuse, compulsive gambling, self-destructive activities, and increase of abuse in intimate partner relationships. And whereas the city of Casper recognizes the need to break the stigma surrounding mental health and promote a culture of openness and support for men who are struggling. And now therefore I, Stephen Cathy, Mayor of City of Casper, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim June 2024 as City of Casper Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and encourage the people of Casper to prioritize their mental and physical well-being, listen to the men in their lives, and actively share information and resources to support each other. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Casper, Wyoming to be affixed this 4th day of June, 2024. Signed, Stephen Cathy. The encouragement in the words that we need to hear and understand. Thank you, sir. Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with council to come forward. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to the public to allow them time to voice their concerns. Please state your name, direct all questions or comments to the mayor. No personal obscenities or threats will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. There is time scheduled for council response to public comment following communications from persons present. If councilors choose to respond to matters, they will do so at that time. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes and no time extensions will be permitted. Please note that public hearings, ordinances, and other non-consent agenda items each have their own separate comment periods, which are also limited to 5 minutes with no duplication of speakers permitted. Mr. Schriftman.
Good evening, Mayor. Tax and spend and tax. Just pay up, be grateful, because we are providing you all these wonderful benefits. Sadly, this seems the philosophy and attitude of council. Recently, last week, I guess it was, I sat through the budget presentation. With all the components for next year is $200 million. That comes to over $3,000 per person. Of that, $64 million will come from state and federal grants paid for by our state and federal taxes. When has council ever cut taxes or fees? I don't know. Additionally, last week, there was a discussion of an additional 1% sales tax. Last time for the previous tax, which adds up to the 5%, you had spent $15,000 of taxpayer money to find out what taxpayers wanted to pay taxes for. Infrastructure was number one, but almost $3 million went to 29 nonprofits. And I know a lot of these nonprofits do a great job in their community, but that's not what the survey results show. Will there be another taxpayer-funded survey for this additional tax? It is unfair to not have a question on the ballot of whether we want to approve or not approve that additional 1% tax, which would make it 6% total. Having a menu is one option, but what's the dilemma? If I want to improve and have the fire station number one replaced or the police station, but I don't want the 1% increase, what are my choices? Council must prioritize public safety and infrastructure before all these other enterprises. Although there's many things that are very well done in the community, but those are the priorities. In another item, you recently passed that there'd be a $400,000, and it's in the budget, I understand, a $400,000 minimum revenue guarantee for the Delta Connection flight. One of the key elements of that presentation by Fly Casper Alliance was a study that they had the Department of Transportation do that showed that there's $11 million of economic benefit between July 22nd and June 22nd, or June 23rd. I didn't see that in the packet. I read it over again this morning. I wrote to Fly Casper Alliance to get a copy of it. I never got a response. I spoke to the operator of the airport. He didn't know about it. So I'm wondering if anybody on council had actually read this study. What was the methodology to use? How did they prove that $11 million of economic development was directly related to the Delta Connection? Why is this study a mystery? Why is it so hard to get a copy? I will file an open records request to get it because I want to review it. Another thing, we had a presentation from the Ford Center, Event Center, which is a wonderful facility. They've been asking for additional capital spending. But while I was sitting here during that presentation, I was wondering what is the responsibility and role of Ford Motor Company? I'm assuming it's Ford Motor Company. I wrote to the operator, I never heard a response. Why are they not stepping up to help our citizens pay for any improvements there? And I'm also a little concerned about the idea of a VIP outside. I don't know how they're going to work that because it gets a little windy up there. VIP means very important person, but to me, a VIP is the 90-year-old widow living on West Ridge Way that can't afford her property taxes and doesn't go out too often. So I hope to get some of these answers, and I'm going to keep working on trying to get those answers. And even though I criticize council when I come up here, I do appreciate the service that you do. It's a sacrifice of your personal time and efforts. And thank you for your time.
Comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Scrivener, for your comments. Mentioned the 2.25 million allocation to nonprofits and the MRG as budgetary allocations that you personally aren't in support of. I wonder, in speaking to your, it seems like you're opposed to a 6-cent tax, and you believe that you should be able to absorb this within the rest of the budget. You have been very diligent in your attendance, and so my guess is you recall seeing our overview of the enterprise accounts and kind of how we base our utility rates and stuff like that. So I guess my question is, other than the MRG or the nonprofit allocation, what to you are other bigger ticket kind of items that you believe are wants or excesses or not necessary services?
Well, philosophically, local government, all government is supposed to be limited constitutionally. And my belief is that anything that can be done by the private sector might be under contract, but it could be done by the private sector. So that's my question.
I believe, and you may know as well, but basically it isn't the Ford Motor Company that's sponsoring the event center. It is the local, and by local, I mean Wyoming Ford Dealers Association that is sponsoring it. It is not Dearborn, Michigan. It is coming from Wyoming.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's why you're not getting a lot of money from the Ford Motor Company.
I would still like to get an answer when I write to somebody that makes a presentation for council to spend taxpayer money on something, because I don't get an answer.
That's another issue, but I answered your question, so.
Thank you.
You bet. Anything else? Anybody else wish to speak to council?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Pat Sweeney, 951 North Kimball. So, in the pre-meeting, you talked about the resolutions and that meeting, going forward to WAM. But I'd like, and it's probably too late, I didn't see this on the agenda until I started digging through, for the 6 cent conversation, which I'm totally in favor of. But as far as some of the resolutions, I think we need to be careful in our endorsements. In particular, as far as liquor license fee changes to, in general, I think on retail licenses, we can have some movement. But what Douglas is suggesting is basically a home rule. So it wouldn't be standardized across the state. They're basically saying they want the fees, they'll set the fees. And that means once you open these things up, that goes statewide. Jackson, on the other hand, is suggesting a range on a retail liquor license from $300 to $15,000 per year. So I think there's some different ways to look at that, and I'm not really in support of either of those as they stand as a resolution. And I did visit with Mike Mosier with the Wyoming State Liquor Association and Chris Brown on this next one as far as the transient guest tax, again suggested by Douglas. So once you open up state statute, and there are a lot of really some folks that were not and still are not in favor of the statewide lodging tax that was put into place just a few years ago. What this resolution from Douglas suggests is to open up state statutes, get rid of the definition of transient, and Mayor yourself identified some of these long-term stays under contract, oil and gas. and having been involved with the industry and still involved in the lodging industry, this is a real key benefit, like to Sinclair or in Rollins Sinclair, and Holly Frontier on turns, in which just happened here in Casper, just got through an initial one in Rollins. And they bring in thousands of workers for a very limited time. And indeed, the reduction of the tax is a saving grace for those communities that have those kind of contract workers. So I understand where Douglas is coming from, because it is a reduction in their lodging tax. But I still believe that there is ample, I wouldn't say ample, but there's still space for regular tourism guests. And in particular here in Casper, absolutely, there's still space. So I'd be careful in opening up state statutes to go about this way would be my only advice. And I didn't want to go through some of the others, but I would be in favor of the decriminalization. I think it's a cost that cities and counties just don't need to take on. But thank you.
Anybody have any comments?
I have a question. Is it okay to? Thank you, Mayor. So, I just want to clarify your thinking about the transient guest. Are you saying just leave it alone, leave the state statute alone?
Mayor, Councilor, yes, just
that's your belief. And I guess what I'm unclear about is you said it's so about consequences of opening up state statute. So can you give me a couple examples of what's the downside of just opening up the statute and making that change?
so. Thank you, Mayor, Councilor. In particular, on lodging tax, if you open that up, and now we have processes in place. So the Division of Tourism is not funded statewide from the general fund anymore. It's strictly funded off of lodging tax dollars. And the key collector in lodging tax in the state is Teton County. In particular, Park County would be second. But you open those floodgates, in my mind, open, and who knows what the legislature will do with it after it's open. They could monkey with the formulas. They could reduce the amount of tax, raising total havoc to the budget.
Yeah.
And I can see that happening.
Okay.
By simply opening the statute.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. I just wanted to understand that aspect of it. So thank you again.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments from the public? None appearing. Move on. Mind your right face. Please read the consent agenda titles. What?
Council response.
You should have just done that.
I didn't hear
Yeah, my understanding is that we would hear from the public, ask clarification questions. That would be the end of that portion, and then we would also have a portion to give comments rather than clarification questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Mr. Sweeney, for your comments, certainly taken into consideration. My comments were more specifically to Mr. Sherman, though. You brought up a couple of things that I was hoping to clarify for yourself and also the rest of the community. You mentioned the $2.25 million allocation to nonprofits from the 1 cent. I like to remind folks that that's 3% of the total revenue generated. So it is 2.25 million is not a number to turn your nose up at, which is 3% of the 1 cent. In my opinion, it's a lot harder to attack the allocations from the other 97% of the funding. The 3%, though, I grant you, is a point of contention with some people. It's hard. The concern we hear from folks most often. I did want to also take this opportunity to remind folks that the nonprofits who receive those contributions, many of them, are leasing and or on contract to manage city-owned facilities. I think of the Casper Senior Center, who we gave a good deal of money, amount of money for meals for seniors, $150,000 to the Casper BMX Club to pay the parking lot for the BMX parking lot at Mike Cedar. All city facilities, $50,000 to Casper Housing Authority for management of the Light Stuff campus, the city facility, Casper Ski Club. So many of those nonprofits, they are managing city facilities. So I just wanted to make, it's not just anyone and everyone. There's certainly a lot of deliberation that goes on to, you made a comment that there was, or at least the way I took it, I apologize if I misunderstood that, but there was an implication that there was no support for those allocations. And at least for myself personally, the 1 cent survey that we did, which is really one of the only hard metrics that we have to go off of when we're making those allocations, it did indicate that 23% of folks thought that community assistance programs were very important, and 35% of folks thought they were important. And so certainly streets and infrastructure were higher priority. However, that was one of the factors that we were using to determine. Folks might recall city staff originally proposed no amount of money to nonprofits, and our council chambers were filled for multiple meetings. We received many emails indicating that that was not something that most folks support. There's certainly people out there that wish there was no nonprofit allocation from the 1 cent. However, large contingency of folks represented both in our survey and also in-person attendance supported that. And then lastly, I just wanted to, because this is another thing that comes up a lot, and so hoping it's an opportunity to educate the public. You had asked why Ford isn't helping with capital at the Ford Landing Center. Ford simply pays for the naming rights. So there was a 6-year deal passed in 2021 for $400,000. As far as I know, that's, Zulima, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that's the only association I believe Ford has with the event center is they pay for the naming rights, $400,000 for 6 years. So that's the only role that they play. OBG, previously Spectrum, is the operator that we contract with for operations of the facility. And back in 2022, we approved a 10-year contract with them, and they did agree to contribute $350,000 towards improvements. And I believe in that time, we've also had to do with Casper and some other stakeholders contribute to helping to fund for bathroom improvements and stuff. So I just wanted to, I appreciate you taking the time to, air your concerns and ask some questions, and I want to make sure you got some answers to those. And hopefully anyone else who's watching might have benefited a little bit as well. So that's all I have. Thank you, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Councilor Paul.
I'll answer one question too. Mr. Schriftman, you suggested that there needed to be a way for people to vote no on the 6 cent, and I think that way is provided with the menu of options. If you want to see Fire Station 1 be built, but don't want to see it be built with 6 cent funds, just simply vote no on that, and then we'll be left to figure out then an alternative funding mechanism. And I think that's our responsibility here. I believe 6 cent is our most clear and expedient path to getting that project moving, but certainly not the only path. We would then need to reevaluate, which projects take highest priority and how we prioritize. I don't think that means that we will never get a Fire Station 1, but I certainly think it means it will come at the expense of other projects that are also very important and also have time sensitivity. And so, those will be the decisions that the council of the day will have to make. But, I don't think that we'll take a no vote to mean we shouldn't build this facility. All of these things need to get done. Like they are our responsibility to maintain these facilities over time, so they will have to be paid for eventually. And so I think that you do have the option to say no. Voters will have that option. I think the question will be then, how do we fund it, and when can we realistically fund it? And I think all of those timelines get significantly longer when we, if we are not able to secure this route. And as we know, that means costs increase over time. And so the burden of that project will be larger when we are able to secure the funding to get it. And I also think we know that maintenance costs increase over time as some of these buildings deteriorate. We end up having to pay more, taxpayers end up having to pay more to sustain the buildings that we have while we continue to wait for current funding levels to, be able to achieve some of these projects. So I think that's certainly an option at the disposal of voters, and I think then it will be left to the council to figure out the path forward. I think every project that you would see this council come forward with is something that will need to get done eventually. So it will just be a matter of when can we do it, how much will it cost by then, and what is the expense in the meantime to continue to put money into buildings that are, failing us and that are no longer serving their useful purpose. So I would say that would be the mechanism for voters that don't want to see a 6% at all. And then I also would like to talk a little bit about just the wants versus needs conversation, because that's coming up a lot as we're in budget and as we contemplate the potential for 6%. I got a few emails from folks suggesting sort of the model, like we'll just pay for the needs only and, get rid of the wants. And I think, for me, that feels like a bit of an oversimplification. I think many people in our community expect more from this council than to pay for just the needs. I think when we look at any proposal where we've considered reducing an amenities set or reducing something that folks perceive as improving their quality of life here, we hear a lot of uproar about that. So I think that indicates to me that the community wants some of both. They want what we need, obviously, but they also want some of what they want, what makes it worth living in Casper, what is attracting people here. And I think also we've got, the question before us, so many of these things that we do, MRG, for instance, is to support the business community here. And so the question is, do we want businesses here or do we need businesses here? I would contend that we need businesses here. Maybe some people would say we want businesses here. Do we want workforce to be attracted here, or do we need workforce to be attracted here? So I think I find that to be a bit of an oversimplification. I think it really is about the balance and how do we balance those scales? And I think that's the hard work of sitting here and thinking about the budget and thinking about a proposal like a 6 cent is how do we strike the right balance, and a balance that tends to a diverse set of needs in the community, and a balance that people are satisfied with at the end of the day, and that hopefully serves the needs of the community. So I hope as we continue to have budget discussions, we can continue to keep it the more nuanced elements of that in mind. It's not just simple, we'll just pay for the needs. I think that it is more complicated than that, and I think that's the hard work of trying to create a budget that's presentable and attends to the needs is really about finding the balance. And so I hope we'll keep the concept of nuance and balance in mind as we think of these things, and not just sort of the oversimplification of black, white, need, don't need.
Yeah, I just want to add that for a colleague. I think similarly to the wants versus need oversimplification, I think there's an oversimplification of what government is supposed to provide, and specifically how government makes a safe and livable community. And just because we support, and we do support, our police and our fire and our other agencies that keep people safe, that's not the full spectrum of what keeps a community safe. We also need productive, viable opportunities for people to spend their time in our communities. So I think it's really important for us to think holistically about what actually makes a community prosper. And I mean, to Councilor Gamroth's point, we invest 3% of money of our taxpayer dollars into agencies that create and support those viable alternatives for people to be productive, happy members of society, which actually helps with our mental health issues, which helps with being healthy, which helps with having opportunities for our youth to go do something fun with their friends at a BMX park. So I think that we need to challenge that oversimplification, and we really need to think about what it looks like to live in a safe place. And that doesn't just mean that you have, you know, certain areas, because we could have the best streets and the best fire department and the best police agency, and no one would want to live here because there's not a full holistic experience of the community. So I just, it's important for us to think about that as we go into the discussions and also as we make policy decisions.
Vice Mayor, did you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think also people are considering what their immediate needs are and where they're at in their lives. When my children were smaller, I visited the parks all the time. Now that they're grown, I am no longer at the parks and the soccer fields and things. And so I think that we need to remember that just because our life isn't in that particular cycle, other people's are. So rec centers, parks, soccer fields, all of those amenities are very important for all the other families with children growing up and things to do. So just because we've aged out, we're no longer using certain facilities does not mean that there is no longer a need in whole for the general public.
Anything else? Now we will go on, and please read the consent agenda titles.
Establishing June 18th, 2024 as a public hearing date for consideration of an ordinance amending section 15.28.250 non-metallic sheathed cable of the Casper Municipal Code. Adoption of fiscal year 2024 to 2025 budget. An ordinance approving a zone change of lot 450 Westwood No. 2 Addition subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming. An ordinance approving a plat creating the Kensington Heights Addition No. 5 and the associated subdivision agreement. And an ordinance approving a plat creating the Highland Park Addition No. 8, the associated subdivision agreement, and a rezone of the proposed Lot 1 Highland Park Addition No. 8.
The chair would entertain a motion to by minute action establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved.
Second.
Is that you, Jenna? Zamber?
I seconded.
Okay. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye?
Aye.
Stay.
Do what?
Oh.
She said yes.
I think she's abstaining from something.
Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor Ingebrigtsen trying to abstain from something.
Say again.
You were trying to abstain from something.
Oh, could you repeat what you were asking, Lisa?
The Westwood subdivision.
He's abstaining.
Did I not
You
hear
wanna do-
right?
Oh, we got it. Yeah.
Yep, we got it now. Thank you. Now, whoops. Oh, please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Ingebrigtsen's abstention noted and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Take all 4 days and you better retrain me. Yeah, we'll start over again. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of an ordinance amending section 15.12.070 license, experience, and examination criteria. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. I do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Eric Nelson to J. Carter Napier dated May 31st, 2024. Exhibit number 2, Casper Star Tribune proof of publication published on June 4th, 2024.
City manager, do you have a report?
Just a brief one, Your Honor. Thank you. As you all are aware, probably, the legislature changed the statutes in such a way that effective on July 1, reciprocity will be required of cities and towns for those contractors who are able to produce contractor licenses issued by another city or county throughout Wyoming. Therefore, our ordinances need to be changed in such a way that those kinds of stipulations be recognized, and the ordinances that you have in front of you attempt to do the same.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, please to approach the lectern. Oh, none appearing. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance to please approach the lectern. There being no one to speak for or against the proposed ordinance, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Mayor.
Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance amending section 15.12.070 license, experience, and examination criteria of the Casper Municipal Code.
Thank you. Now the chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor Ingebretson voting aye, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance removing chapter 13.02 in its entirety and updating and amending chapters 13.04, 13.32, and 16.16 of the Casper Municipal Code pertaining to the CPU Advisory Board.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Council will now listen to public comment. None appearing. Do we have any discussion? Amendments? Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
The Vice Mayor Ingebretson voting aye, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance amending chapter 10.24 of the Casper Municipal Code regarding speed limits and speed zones.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Council will now listen to public comment. Any discussion amongst council? Any amendments? Abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
The Vice Mayor Ingebretson voting aye, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now consider a resolution establishing speed limits and speed zones. Because this is not on the consent agenda, it will be open for discussion by council. Please read the resolution by title only.
Establishing speed limits and speed zones within the city of Casper, Wyoming.
The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution just read.
So moved. Second.
City manager, do you have a report? Do we need a report from the city attorney?
It's okay. Thank you, Your Honor. With respect to the primary thrust of the resolution that you have in front of you, the changes being suggested are in relation to the area along South Kaufman that you've discussed previously. One of the stipulations that was important for staff to complete or to be completed was the analysis that is driven primarily by requirements of the Wyoming Department of Transportation, which was done and should be reviewable in your packets. And then I would suggest come to the conclusion as well that changes pursuant to what you see in your resolution are substantiated and further substantiated as well by the information that the chief has previously provided you.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Attorney, did you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, just to dovetail onto that, with the passage of the change to the speed limit ordinance, we do need to then adopt all of the other changes that had currently existed within the city. So in the resolution here, you'll see a number of changes, and those have been brought forward specifically from ordinance. The only new change is the one that City Manager Napier just described. And as you can see, and I think this was the impetus behind the ordinance change, there is a very robust process that staff has to go through in order to substantiate the change. So to be clear, we're pulling into ordinance all of the pre-existing deviations from state statutory speed limits, and then this would then change the speed limit on Kaufman for a portion.
Thank you very much. Do we have, now listen to public comment. Does anybody have anything to say about that? Public comment. None appearing. Do we have any discussion amongst councilors? Are there any amendments? Do we have any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor Engelbrecht voting aye, and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
11B1, authorizing a temporary use and occupancy agreement between the City of Casper and the YMCA of Natrona County for use of the pool facility at the YMCA by the City of Casper Recreation Division Aquatics Pass holders. 11B2, adopting the Natrona County Emergency Operations Plan. 11B3, adopting the collective bargaining agreement for July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 between the City of Casper and the Firefighters Local Union 904. 11B4, authorizing the purchase of a 2002 Pierce Sky arm ladder truck and a memorandum of understanding between the City of Casper, Wyoming and the Gillette Wright Campbell County Fire Protection Joint Powers Board. 11B5, authorizing a lease agreement with the Casper Shooters Club for the lease of the Stuckenhoff Sports Shooters Complex. 11B6, authorizing change order number 5 to the agreement with GH Phipps Wyoming LLC for the Casper Family Aquatic Center Natatorium Improvements Project. 11B7, authorizing an agreement with Ferguson Waterworks for the 2024 CPU materials procurement. And 11B8, authorizing an agreement with Dana Kepner Company of Wyoming LLC for the 2024 CPU materials procurement project.
The council would now entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda items just read.
Second.
City Manager, would you like to comment on any of these items?
No, sir. Thank you.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
With Vice Mayor Engelbrecht voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the consent minute action title.
12A1, inclusion of summary proposed budget into the minutes of the June 4th, 2024 council meeting.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
Vice Mayor Engelbrecht voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
At this time, we ask councilors to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We'll start on the left this time with Councilor Pollack.
you very much. I have not had any meetings since I last spoke to y'all, so, I don't think I have anything to bring in today.
Counselor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess these are more questions and just kind of things that not quite sure what to do sometimes. But, so I did have one question about there was an emergency services was listed as part of one of the reasons that the air race group didn't come to Casper. And I was just wondering, they didn't really elaborate on specifics. Do you know, does anybody know what their specific concerns were, or what's that? Oh, did you send that in an email? I haven't read.
Mr. Mayor, thank
Maybe
you.
I missed that.
Counselor, I may not be crystal clear with
Okay.
regard to what it is you're asking. But what I do remember about the information that we received from Mr. Januska was that indeed a lot of the services that they were looking for pertaining to hotels and those kinds of ancillary services were simply not available in Casper by itself or from surrounding communities that could provide those services as well. Whereas some of our competitor communities, in fact, the competitor community was able to not only provide those kinds of services from that community in and of itself, but with neighboring communities offering those services as well. The compilation of which provided far more than we could in terms of hotel service. As far as emergency response is concerned, I don't recall anything along those
in the memo
lines.
that I read. That's a reason I thought, but maybe I'm mistaken. Okay. Just again, one thing, again, this is kind of follow up on some previous dialogue we've had. Was there was some mention about our community dialogue. I'm still very concerned about the amount of youth violence that we've seen lately in Casper. And I think up to this point, there's just been some ideas about the need for some community-wide effort to address that concern. And so in my mind, I feel like, and I'm not quite sure who the right agency, organization, entity, et cetera, is to take the lead on this. I just know that that I feel like there's something that needs to be done. And in my mind, our initiatives toward addressing homelessness in Casper, I mean, I believe that is a good example of community coming together to address an issue. So I guess I feel personally just a need to do some research, and I would certainly welcome other counselors, Counselor Gamera, helping me to research models, perhaps that we could look at, perhaps in other municipalities who are addressing the issue of, and certainly ours has not risen to the level of some major metropolitan area. However, I think there's still enough concern in the community and among council that I feel like it warrants some investigation. So, and then just a couple of citizen concerns that have come across my email that I'm sure have come across many of yours as well about speeding vehicles and so on and so forth near Buckboard Park. And I did respond to one of the inquiries and just urged that citizen to contact the police non-emergency number. Certainly if it's a non-emergency situation, but to certainly contact 911 if she sees a crime in progress. And then there was mention of another communication about abandoned motorhomes on East Day Street. And I know we've had lots of dialogues about code enforcement and so forth. So again, just kind of didn't know if anyone else had shared or seen those concerns or, and I remember the discussion at the last meeting about the
the code enforcement work that was underway. So again, I know we have a great code enforcement department and certainly appreciate the work they do and know they'll take care of it in a timely way. So that's all that's come across my mind. Thank you very much.
Counselor Jensen,
I have nothing.
Counselor Pacheco,
I don't either.
Counselor Haskins.
Brought something. I actually didn't have any meetings, so just things I found of interest because I'm sick of having nothing. Here I go. The art walk starts this week at 5:30 downtown, Thursday. Friday, Mr. Counselor Bond, you should probably write this down. The Blue Ribbon Collaborative is meeting at YMCA, 5 o'clock. They're encouraging the youth to come to speak about things that they think we should be doing to help them. And so far, that has been the most productive group of individuals in Casper. It's not the homeless initiative yet, but I think it's the starting point. And I don't know if they're gonna make that an official group, but we should definitely have as many of us there as possible so we can be in on it. Let's see. City council elections are coming up. Politics in the Park is a free thing put on by a group in Casper. They're Republican for everything else, but they do grace us with the opportunity to have all of the city councilors, regardless of our secret associations, come and speak. It's a great idea to figure out who you want to get elected. I encourage those of you who are running to make sure you show. And Friday, tickets to George Thorogood are going on sale.
Tickets to who?
George Thorogood, come on, bad to the bone.
Steve, you were young enough to remember that.
You're kidding me. Get a haircut and get a real job?
No.
I have nothing to say to that. The troopers are.
Oh, okay, Boomer would have been fine.
No, it's music.
Wasn't mine.
Okay, troopers are practicing in Kelly Walsh. Definitely stop and listen because boy, they're fun. And also, Counselor Bond and I were on a committee when there was a different judge, and we would really like to discuss having that committee come back because now some of us feel light on committees, and two, we really did feel like we learned a whole lot there, and now we don't know anything. So we want that back, please. And thank you. I'm done. Wow. I'm sorry, I told you a boomer.
Counselor Gamrock.
Mayor, there was an old Yellowstone District Committee meeting yesterday. I missed it unfortunately, but thankfully Liz takes really good notes. She shared pictures of the recent downtown cleanup event, of which that committee had multiple representatives volunteering. I've praised them before for their volunteer efforts, and I need to again because that group is super active. They show up anytime there's a call out, and so I really respect how much time that those representatives spend in the community for beautification and cleanup and just improving our quality of life. The summer events calendar was shared, and that's an attempt to make sure all of the stakeholders, Old Yellowstone District, DDA, and anyone else downtown or in the area, to make sure everyone's aware of what each other's doing to support each other, but also to avoid any scheduling conflicts. Don't want to schedule 2 concerts at the same night at the same time and be trying to split attendees and have noise compete with each other. So that's something that those groups have been trying to be more mindful of the past year or two. Thanks for mentioning the first art walk is Thursday. There's also Pride Fest on Saturday, Western Fest for CNFR on Sunday. The David Street Station movie series starts next Friday. Nick Fest is next weekend. So the next couple months are going to be jam-packed, plenty to do. They had also shared the open container map in the meeting. I've been soliciting folks on DDA board and anyone else I bump into, downtown property owners, merchants. I've not heard any concerns yet from any of those folks. So I feel pretty good about us moving forward with that. And I know the Casper Historic Preservation Committee had recently closed voting for their next Christmas ornament. I don't know if they made a decision. I don't know.
Haven't heard that.
No, haven't heard yet. So pending announcement of that. There's a couple items I was hoping we could discuss a little bit more at length before we approve our budget in totality. The first one, and maybe it would be more appropriate to discuss this when we get to the Parks Master Plan. It's a shame we're not getting that, just the timing doesn't line up to where we have that before we approve the budget. But to Councilor Bond's comments, over the weekend, we got an email in this regard, and then there was also an article today that was compelling me to bring it up. The first is Buckboard Park, where I believe it's Lene I hope I'm not butchering that pronunciation, but where she was murdered. We've heard from lots of people about issues they've seen in that area. I went and took a walk of it myself the other day. I go with my 6-year-old to play on the playground equipment, but just because we had been hearing from people that live in the area about the issues, I went and just kind of was more investigator than swing set operator. Buckboard is really weird. It's a very large park. There's no lighting except the street side access, and it's one of those unique exceptions where there's very little street side access. There's a block that has access to the park, and then there's this huge park that is surrounded by houses and residential, which is kind of unique. So I know folks in that area would love to see some more lighting, just to address kind of that enclave back there, where I guess a lot of nefarious activity has been occurring. We've heard from folks in the area that teens use it as a hangout, to vandalize property, to get into fights. So that was something again, I don't know if it's something that we need to talk about before we approve the budget, or if the budget that we approve for the Parks Department will have enough wiggle room in there that we could potentially explore increased lighting at some of the parks. And so I guess I'm hoping for direction from you guys. I'd like to push more aggressively to get it done ahead of time if we're not gonna have the wiggle room later. Or if we are gonna have the wiggle room later, I'd be all right till we receive the Parks Master Plan so we can lump it into kind of all of the other needs that we see at our parks. And so I guess before I pitch something to my colleagues, I would like direction from Carter on where you think opportunities might be for that discussion to take place.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Counselor, thank you for the question. I would say that the budget you are preparing to pass does not have the wiggle room to accommodate capital improvements along the lines of what you're describing. And so if it pleases the council, what I would recommend is that maybe we take up the conversation in a work session with the eye toward an amendment that would bring money to the table to help tackle capital improvements that you would like to see. Without a doubt, a part of that needs to include some analysis from the parks team in concert with some of the comments that you're getting and some of the things you're noticing, so that we can be sure we hit the mark with regard to estimates and so forth that we would compile to try to meet those needs, whatever they may be. And so my short answer is we need more discussion, and it will likely need to include an amendment that would come maybe in budget amendment 1, which is typically around September.
Okay. Thank you, Carter. I appreciate that information. Same time. Oh, go ahead.
Along those lines, then, we don't have to get this discussion in next week before we approve the budget on, okay.
No, that would really be detrimental to the passage of the budget, frankly.
Well, that was the only reason I wanted to ask that question right now. So, very good. Okay. Continue on.
Thank you. Appreciate the information. I'm comfortable with that, especially since I'm hoping we'll have the Parks Master Plan before September. So hopefully it'll give us an opportunity to review that and kind of take it all as a whole. As a side note to that, I saw an article today that our police officers had to respond to Mike Lansing Field at 9:25 on Friday. There were 30 to 50 vehicles in the parking lot, 50 to 75 people. It sounds like the officers, the juveniles and the young adults did not respond warmly, I guess, to the officers dropping in on them. And so, I guess it's just one more incident in kind of a worrying trend of, youth violence and stuff like that, I guess. I think it's well within our purview to do some things to address the parks. Mike Lansing Field and Buckboard are both, our amenities. And so hopefully there'll be an opportunity to see what we can do after we've received the Parks Master Plan and can have more discussions about that. This is sort of adjacent to budget discussions as well. I attended the last town hall on May 9th regarding the proposed gravel pit off Coates Road. And Mr. Kyle True from Prism Logistics mentioned the ever-growing and perpetual need for county and the city to source gravel. And so I don't know, again, if this is something that we can, it doesn't have to happen before we approve the budget, but I would like to hear from Shad or whoever might want to represent streets in regards to what is the city's need for gravel, Do we have current issues with our supply chain of gravel? Should this gravel pit materialize in this area, would we expect decreased costs, construction costs for streets projects as a result of its proximity to us? I would just love to know, there's folks out there kind of representing the city and its needs. And I would just like city staff to give it to us straight in regards to what is our current need for gravel? Do we have issues with supply chains? If a gravel pit were to open up very near, would we expect cheaper gravel? Would we benefit from reduced construction costs? Those are some of the questions I'd like. And so I don't know if I need to ask formally my colleague for that to be part on a work session in the somewhat near future, but that's what I would ask, I guess, if that's the best direction.
We want that on the work session?
Yes, sir.
However.
Looks like we have more than 4 thumbs, so, and a lot of ambivalence. So if we could get that on a work session, that would be
One
great.
thumbs down. Put it on the.
Thank you. And then one last item, maybe for the city attorney. I read recently that Cody City Council was unable to appeal a planning and zoning board decision in regards to the construction of the LDS temple in a residential neighborhood. That's a very controversial thing that they've been kind of working through for, I don't know, probably 18 months up in that area. And so I just wanted to verify that that's not also the case here, that we do have the authority to disagree and overrule a P&Z board decision. I guess I was just hoping for some clarification on that.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilor, I'm unfamiliar with that latest, I guess, procedural turn there, but I'm happy to research it and get you an answer back. I don't believe that we would be precluded from, overturning it, but I don't want to shoot from the hip with that.
Thank you. I guess I don't know if I need to ask that again as the group, but I would like to be proactive about that, know ahead of time, rather than us get in a similar situation where we're finding out after the fact that we are bound by decisions made by the P&Z board, who I respect all those members and stuff, but they're not elected, they're appointed. And so I would just like to make sure we have that authority.
I believe you have something, Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that council should be aware of, that is very active and aggressive litigation. And so, without a doubt, you may be asking the attorney to opine about active litigation that is taking place right now between the city and the church. The other thing is, I've been a personal witness to council turning down Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations a number of times throughout my career. And I think it'll be really challenging to try to find a situation that mirrors what's going on in Cody to determine whether or not council would have the same ability to weigh in or not weigh in pertaining to the complexities that exist in that very aggressive, emotional debate that's taking place up in Cody. So I just want to set the context correct here to make sure we understand what it is you want us to do. But there's a number of ways the Planning and Zoning Commission renders opinions and ad hoc guidance in their quasi-judicial role that council has overturned in the past. And that may be a much easier question to research than trying to match detail for detail, whether or not council would be able to do what the city council in Cody has professed to not be able to do in that complex litigation.
Thank you. Knowing that I'm not interested in apples to apples comparison, I was just wondering more so in general whether we have the authority to disregard or overrule recommendations from the P&Z board. It sounds like you've been witness to that many times. And so it sounds like in general, that's the case. And that was really all I was looking for. Thank you. And again, appreciate everyone serving on the P&Z board. That's an unpaid position. They all volunteer their time. So thank you very much for everyone that serves on that. It was not meant as a like to any of them. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. And in my tenure on council, we have gone opposite of P&Z. So that we have done that here and it has passed the test of time.
Thank you.
Councilor Sutherland.
Do not have anything tonight.
Vice Mayor Ingebretson.
I'm just going to try to get better so I can get to Heindel tomorrow.
Very good.
Conference, so.
It will.
Basically, yeah. It's hotter than all get out in Houston, Texas, with unbelievable humidity and traffic that to get to a restaurant, you could drive to Douglas and still not quite be there. And instead of taking the 45 minutes to get to Douglas, you spend about an hour and a half getting there. So I am extremely glad to be in Casper, Wyoming with our low humidity and our open spaces. So thank you, Wyoming. Along those same lines, do not forget that this is CNFR coming up. Bulls, Bronx, and Breakaway start this coming Sunday. Slack is Monday and Tuesday. Evening performances start Tuesday night. We are ahead of schedule or above last year's sales on both season tickets and individual tickets. So if you want to go, you better get out there and get your tickets. So put on your boots, grab your big buckle, get your hat, head on up to the event center this coming week. So that's my plug for the rodeo. We look forward to all those young people, treat them nicely, and I think they will treat you quite nicely. They are normally very, very nice, gentlemanly, ladylike people. So we want to express our gratitude for having them. The next meeting of the city council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 on Tuesday, June 11th, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 18th. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss related to land. The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
There are a majority of councilors present, and a motion to adjourn into an executive session has been moved and seconded. This motion requires a 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye.
Aye.
Please record the vote.
All councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
A greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.